Hello everyone, it's Duck7. Today we are playing JESKAI Control. I think this build is very strong and slightly underrepresented in the metagame and also very well positioned against the top decks in the format. Okay, so if we take a peek at the metagame right now, we can see that energy decks take almost 22% of the metagame right now. And we can also see that other most popular decks are Dimir, Frogtide, and Eldrazi decks like Through the Breach, Eldrazi Tron, Eldrazi Ramp, and stuff like Ruby Storm and Domain Zoo, Amulet Titan, stuff like that. Okay, so this deck is pretty brutal against energy decks. It's maybe the best deck against energy. But if not the best, among like top 2 or 3 best decks, definitely against it. It plays Wrath of the Skies. This card is just so strong against them. And it's not just that, all the cards in the deck are just very well tuned to beat this deck. We got very effective removal like 4 Galvanic Discharge, we got Static Prison, we got Prismatic Ending. We got Phlages, which is very important when you're fighting the Boros and Mardu energy matchups. Also, we got the One Rings and the Solitude, so a lot of cheap, effective removal and answers to everything they do. So if we take a look here, we can see that deck plays 16 1 mana cards. We got Wrath is almost always like a 2 mana spell. So we got 7 2 mana spells, and we can pitch cast the Forces and the Solitudes. So this means basically we got 4 3 mana spells and 4 4 mana spells, and we can play Solitudes and Forces for 0, which puts the overall mana curve of this deck very low. And this deck can play really well with just like 4 lands, and if you have 5, that's mostly enough to play double, triple spell in most of your turns. Okay, so that's it. On the sideboard, we got 4th Wrath of the Skies, 3rd Force of Negation, some more cheap answers, counter spells like Stern Scolding, Spell Pierces, Consign to Memory, Soul Guide Lanterns as a graveyard hate of choice, some Teferis, Charmhouse. Okay, so 16 1 mana spells, and we got Spell Snares main, we got Spell Pierce, we got Consign to Memory. Consign to Memory is very strong in this deck. It's not just accidentally in the main board. This card is so good in the current metagame that I would like play it in random blue decks. But this card is just not accidentally in because it has a lot of interaction with this deck. So what does it do here? I actually started with 3 Consign to Memories in the main, then I trimmed to 2. I believe like 2 main, 2 side feels perfect for now. But Consign to Memory in this deck can scam your Solitude, scam your Phlage, and counter your ring killing you effect in the upkeep. So it's a very effective card. Even if you can't use it against your opponent's card, you can still use it with your cards, and it's very good. It's very good to scam Solitude, it's very good to scam Phlage, it's very good to counter your ring effect, losing you 3-4 life in the upkeep, and often you can just tap the ring in response to the life loss ability, and then find your Consign to Memory and counter the life loss effect to this is a very important play, the play that won me a lot of matches, and I believe it's very important to have an instant speed way to just counter that ring effect and let you live another turn, then rings you draw a bunch more cards and gets you more answers so you can survive the next turn and the next one and take over the game. Okay, so overall, as I said, mana values are very low, and this deck can play very well with not many lands. You need 4 to play the ring and to escape Phlage, but 4 is often enough to double, even triple spell. And when you get to the 5, 6 with the ring in play, you don't really need anything else. Okay, so I trimmed slightly mana base. I trimmed it to 23 lands, as I believe with putting the mana curve lower. And I think 23 lands worked perfectly for me over the course of 40-50 matches I played. I even had 22 and 1 point and didn't really feel much of the mana issues. I did. You will eventually have to sometimes mulligan more if you play less lands in your deck, but I think that is okay if you know that you won't get as flooded as much in the mid game and late game, which can be very important factor when you're playing Frogtide matchups or Jeskai Control mirrors. Okay, so that is it. Okay, so while playing, I was counting on playing mostly against 3 matchups, as I already said. The deck is pretty brutal against energy. Okay, so the 2 other most played decks right now are Eldrazi Ramp, Eldrazi Through the Breach, and Frogtide. Okay, so we already got Consigned to Memory in the main, which is really good against Eldrazi decks. Bolt Eldrazi Ramp and Through the Breach. Also, Force of Negation is great against them, and Counterspell. So we got a lot of hate in the main. Also, Static Prisons can take their rings or ramp cards, so it works very well against them. Okay, so on the sideboard we also got 2 more Consigned to Memory. We got Obsidian Charmhouse and 1 more Force of Negation, stuff like that. Okay, so that is it. So after playing a lot of Eldrazi matchups and tweaking the list when I felt that the deck is pretty well positioned against Eldrazi, I think it's favored in this form. To win that, the remaining matchup I had to win was the Frogtide. Okay, so I tuned the rest of the deck to have the list in the 60 plus the sideboard cards to be the most effective against Frogtide, because that is one of the most played mid-range decks at the moment. So I think having like a Spell Snare helps play against the frog a lot, and I also believe addition of Prismatic Ending is crucial to fight that matchup. Static Prison, in contrary to belief that it's not good in the control decks, Static Prison is great in control decks. We got Turn the Narrative, we got Galvanic Discharge, and these 7 cards often just get you a lot of spare energy that you can use on your Static Prison turn after turn, and when you have the ring drawing you a bunch of cards, you will never lose access to gaining more energy. Also, Wrath of the Skies can gain you a lot of energy in the late game. Okay, so that is it. Also, the common play pattern when you play Static Prison in your Wrath of the Skies deck is letting your Static Prison die on a turn you plan to play Wrath of the Skies. So you have to play that smart, and you have to count from the beginning that when you will let your Static Prison die, to use Wrath of the Skies and kill the thing that was below Static Prison, of course. So that is the common play pattern and thing that you often use. Okay, so that is it. On the sideboard, as we already explained, some of the choices, and we can now go to the gameplay. But before that, I just want to remind players that I have the Decktionary profile here, where I make additional content like sideboard guides. Currently I got 3 active updated sideboard guides: Mardu Energy, Domain Zoo sideboard guide, and Mardu Bombardment sideboard guides, all fully updated to my latest favored lists. Okay, in the future there will be more sideboard guards there, and at the moment they are all available in the medium tier. Soon there will be additional content available in the guide tier too. For now, only thing post MH3 on Decktionary are these 3 guides in the medium tier. Okay, so but expect some more updates to both of these tiers in this close future. during September. Okay, so that is it. We can now go check out the gameplay. Okay, so this was the first match and I was playing first. So let's check out how that went. Okay, so the survey lands are just incredibly important pieces that actually help you lower your land count, help you find the relevant stuff. It's just incredibly important part of the puzzle here. Okay, so I got turn 2 Metallus Archive, unfortunately 2 tap lands for me here. But that's okay. I was playing against Boros Energy. They did not have a aggressive start. Even if they had, I had all the answers I need here. So I have already Breath of the Skies here in my hand, which is great against them. But I want to use it at the right moment. Okay, so I decide to counter the Ajani because Ajani is potentially a problem here because they can immediately sack the cat on the Goblin Bombardment and start doing Ajani abilities. Okay, so here opponent goes for a Phlage. I decided not to Solitude the Phlage or not even use any counterspell, anything, just go for the Wrath of the Skies here, kill the Bombardment, kill the Ocelot Pride. In response, opponent just sacks their creatures. But yeah, that's totally fine by me. I have a Phlage of my own, I have Solitudes, Galvanic Discharge. At this point already it feels like this game is impossible to lose. And now also got another Wrath of the Skies. I decide to just pitchcast it on the Solitude, kill the Ajani, and kill the Cat Warrior too. And my opponent is now on 1 card in hand. I have Solitude for their Phlage, and I have Phlage of my own, so it's very hard position for my opponent. They play Gyro Souls and put Giganta to their hand. Okay, so they're pretty close to casting a Phlage, and they also find Arena of Glory, which is not ideal for me, but it's okay. As I said, I have Solitude to kill their Phlage. I have a Phlage of my own in the yard. So my opponent plays Phlage from the yard, and I decide to just pitchcast the Solitude, exile the Phlage, and then on my turn just go for my Phlage and start attacking them. I could potentially let this Phlage attack me, but it's 9 more damage and I didn't want to go that low on life, so I decided to go for the pitchcast Solitude immediately, then cast Phlage on my turn, and then I have a really large creature on the field, so I don't even care if they play Giganta. My creature is bigger, and I also have another Phlage in hand, which means I can kill Giganta next turn if they play it. It's a perfect position for me. Opponent has Giganta and 2 mystery cards. At this point they find another land to go for Giganta immediately, which is really good for me. Because yeah, I can just play another Phlage, deal 3, then attack with Phlage, deal 3 more. And also find Arena of Glory, which can be pretty good with all the Phlages, of course. And yeah, I go kill their Giganta basically for free, gain a bunch more life, and the opponent now only has a Goblin Bombardment. And yeah, I even deal with that immediately. Phlage is a pretty quick clock. They find a way to deal with it, the Static Prison. But here it is. I go for the fetch and turn the narrative, a surveil card in the yard, and I already have enough cards in the yard to play another Phlage with Arena of Glory. This is like 12 damage this turn, basically very close to lethal, and my opponent concedes. That is game 1. Let's check out game 2. Okay, so in the game 2, I mulligan the starting land because I had 5 lands. I don't want to be flooded against them, I'd just rather be screwed. And yeah, okay, so I start with Ragrin Triumph, and you can see the sideboarding plan. At this point I had 3 Obsidian Charmhouse in the side. And yeah, that was the only difference between this league and the league and the what we are seeing right now there. Okay, so you can see here that I removed all the forces of negations, all consigns to memories, the spell pierces, and even 1 counter spell to bring in all the graveyard hate and removal from the side. So even the dress down comes in. Both of my Soul Guide Lanterns, they are great against Phlage. You can just play it, remove Phlage, then like draw a card with it. It just works very well. Okay, so I had multiple options here. I decide to go for the dress down. Dress down denies Amp-Traptor ATB ability. And yeah, here I go for the One Ring. Yeah, with the resolved One Ring, whoever resolves the One Ring first is always in a big advantage. And now I'm basically looking for Breath of the Skies is probably the best card here, but stuff like single removal or more counter spells are also pretty good. Phlage is also pretty sweet with Arena of Glory. Here I find like all of that. I also find a Static Prison to get rid of the One Ring. Yeah, and I have tuned the narrative. You always have enough stuff to for your Static Prison. That is, it was never the case for me that I didn't have enough cards, enough energy to support the Static Prison. You can always just very easily do that. Opponent goes for a Static Prison, and it's kind of perfect for me. I let them draw 1 card, but then I kill their Static Prison, and their entire board get my Static Prison back, gets 2 additional energy, take their ring again. It's kind of just as perfect as it doesn't get better than this. Okay, so I go for the Breath of the Skies. I play it for 2 mana and still have plenty of energy left in the pool. Play my land tapped, hold the counterspell for their turn, and discard Phlage. That was my intention. So I discard the Phlage so I can play it from the yard next turn. I have Arena of Glory in the field, so yeah, it's kind of impossible to lose at this point. The matchup overall just feels super easy. And yeah, I decide to counter the Charmal. And I untap with everything I need here. And yeah, Phlage in the yard, another ring in the hand. I have plenty of energy, plenty of removal. Yeah, I can do whatever I want. And yeah, obviously go for escape Phlage with haste. That is the quickest way to kill them. So I escape my Phlage and opponent concedes. So that is match 1. Okay, so let's check out match 2. The entire league was all 2-0 wins, a perfect 5-0, 10-0 league. Deck felt super powerful. Okay, so I start with tapped Hallowed Fountain, pass the turn. Opponent plays the Ether Vial, and I choose to play just a blue land and hold the counterspell for this turn. And yeah, when I see opponent plays Volatile Fault, then it's obvious they're playing Death and Texas style deck. Okay, so I have to be careful about my fetching. Opponent didn't play anything still. They just pass the turn here. Consign to Memory is just a super useful card. You can do really a lot with it, and I actually kind of liked the Stoneforge Mystic getting the Lion Sash. It felt like a pretty decent play against all the Phlages around. It was really like a very efficient way to deal with it. I kind of really like that, so I was thinking about some possible builds with it, not just Texas style, but Stoneblade stuff. Okay, so here Etherwile is also not really hard to deal with in this deck. I have Wrath of the Skies, which accidentally kills like all that. And the consign to memory being able to often just scam your Solitude in, or scam your Phlage in, or counter the opponent's rings, and it's also just super good against all the Eldrazi decks. And as you can see in this moment, I left one mana open for Consign to Memory. I was expecting them try to do some tricks, so in response they tried to flicker the vial, but I ended up consigning that and killing both vial and flicker wisp. Okay, so opponent now has more cards than me, but I have a lot of lands. I have Arena of Glory and Solitude, so Solitude with Arena of Glory is pretty cool, and if I draw a Phlage at almost any point, it's pretty much game over. So I kind of just hoping for them not to destroy my white sources, but I have enough mana to pay even if they have Arbiter or something like that, so it's not really a thing. Okay, so opponent goes for Knight of White Orchid, and I go for the Solitude. I go for a Solitude, and opponent plays their Solitude. I discharge it, and here I they destroyed all my red sources here, but I draw another land to go for the Solitude, kill their Arbiter. Okay, so now I have Solitude on the field attacking. I don't have any more red sources, but I'm not in a hurry to like draw them. It's totally fine by me. Eventually I will draw them and I will be able to play my Phlage or whatever. So at the moment I'm okay. They only have 2 cards in hand. And here I already find 1 red source. I don't want to play it right now. I'm just keeping this one in hand and waiting for a fetch or something like that for a second one, so I can escape Phlage or something like that if needed. And my opponent trades with the Solitude. That's fine by me. I have plenty of life. My draws should overall be better than theirs. I play the ring, I play the Solitude, and play the Phlage. So yeah, opponent here tries to play the Felia. I have counterspell for that. And we are now in the top deck mode. Both players in the top deck mode, but as I said, I feel like I'm favored to win in this position. Unless my opponent, of course, gets something really relevant. And now I have Mesa on the field. I don't want to crack it. And I have another Foundry in hand. And here I have Static Prison. It was a dilemma here. Do I go for Caldra or do I go for Token? And as you can see, I have 7 energy here, so it's like almost never a problem. I decide to counter the Arbiter. I decided to take the Caldra because if I didn't take the Caldra, then they can just equip it on any creature, and it seemed like it's going to be a long game, so that seemed like the best option. But unfortunately, my opponent draws the removal for Static Prison. So that was not a good news for me, and I'll draw another fetch which gets me another red source if needed. So at this point I'm all covered up for the red sources, and my opponent draws the Witch Enchanter killing the Static Prison. And my draws were not great at this point. Spell Pierce and Force of Negation wasn't exactly what I was looking for here. But at the best moment I draw the one ring. I also have a Minamo on the field which can untap my ring and kind of make it go crazy. Okay, so I pass the turn. They can deal damage this turn, but I have to draw some relevant stuff to get out of this situation. I'm keeping Force of Negation for their turn. If it's not needed, then end of turn I can just draw 2 more with the ring. I will receive 2 damage from the ring, but hopefully draw into more relevant stuff to get out of this situation. Okay, opponent plays Recruiter. And yeah, end of turn, as I said, I go for the ring, draw 2 Solitudes, lose 2 life, and now I have a counterspell, 2 Solitudes. This gives me a way to deal with Caldra, and I gain more life here. And I was also able to escape the Phlage, which was pretty good. Opponent plays Felia end turn, but okay, so I had a Force of Negation to deal with what was this card? This is actually a cool card from Assassin's Creed, the Phantom Blade. They were trying to play this to kill my creature, but luckily I had Force of Negation for that, so that wasn't a big deal. And I had a Solitude to exile the Caldra token and Phlage to block the Felia. So that was enough to survive a turn, and when I untapped, then I had like multiple ways to gain life with Solitude, with Phlage. I eventually find another ring and overwhelm the opponent with all the stuff, but that Force of Negation actually ended up mattering quite a lot, countering the Phantom Blade for 0 mana there. And yeah, the 2 0 mana spells, of course, Force of Negation and Solitude did the job, and eventually Ring plus Phlage prevailed and won me this game super easily after all that trouble. But it was actually this was my hardest matchup of this entire league. Of all the decks, this was the hardest one to play, definitely. Okay, so we can see here the sideboarding plan for this matchup. Again, forces go out, pierces go out, one counterspell go out, but 2 consigned to memory stayed in. I again used the extra removal I have on the sideboard, and the Stern Scoldings also pretty useful. They are creature deck, and like Scolding counters probably their entire deck. A Spell Snare is perfect here, so what I want to do here is Spell Snare their 2-drop and fetch into the Survey Land, put some stuff in the yard for my Phlage, of course, some fuel from the Phlage, and smoothen my draws. So I go for Meticulous Archive, put another Survey Land in the yard. I already have 2 of lands in my hand, so I can now just again, I'm expecting them to play some 2-drop, and it's perfect for my Spell Snare. And they also play Stoneforge Mystic, and I have Solitude for that, and I can exile. I don't want them to put Caldra on the field. They did find a Lion Sash, but they probably have like Caldra too if they didn't go for it. So I decide to exile one of my Phlages with Solitude to get rid of the Stoneforge. I have unfortunately my opponent has a Lion Sash in their hand to get rid of my Phlage. It actually seems like very decent way to deal with it right now, and it gets large quite easily in this deck. It's already a 4/4, so I can't kill it with Phlage. You can while it in and just remove the Phlage, and my opponent used the situation when I was tapped here to kill one of my lands. I play another ring, and basically I'm looking for a Solitude here, looking for a Static Prison, or looking for Wrath of the Skies. My opponent was able to Skyclave Apparition my land, take the land, sorry, the one ring, take the one ring, and but yeah, this was okay for me. I was able to kill the Skyclave Apparition, gain some life, get a blocker for a turn to block the Arbiter. My opponent is of course able to eat the Phlage with the Lion Sash. Yeah, that's actually pretty good and hard to kill. I kind of really like it, and I definitely kind of want to go through some possibilities with some Stoneblade decks using the Lion Sash and other relevant Stoneblade stuff. Okay, so here I'm holding Snare and Counterspell. I go for the tune end of turn and finally find the card I was looking for. I brought the 4th Wrath of the Skies in, so 4 Wrath of the Skies in my deck. Finally find the one I was looking for. So I'm holding a Spell Snare and Counterspell there, and just play the Wrath of the Skies. Clear their entire board. This also kills Ether Vial, which lets me play my counterspells better. This Wrath of the Skies is just a perfect card for a control deck like this. Basically, just removes you of all the troubles, all the possible troubles you can have in the control deck for a small cost of mostly like 2 or 3 mana. It's just a very brutal card. Okay, so now again I have Phlage in the yard. There's already like 4 other cards. There I can go for another Surveil, and I can just go for the Escape Phlage next turn. And I also can have a backup Counterspell and the Solitude in hand. So basically this game is over. Okay, so this turn I think I can just Static Prison their I can afford to Static Prison their Vial and just pass the turn. Don't want to let them play instant speed. Okay, I almost failed here. I did not expect my opponent to have a White Orchid Phantom into Ephemerate. This almost like ruined all my red sources, which would make me unable to play the Phlage from the yard. Luckily I got another red source to play it, and then the game it was over. But if I did not, I would be in a kind of trouble. So that ended up well for me, and as I said, I think this was definitely the hardest matchup for me in this league. Okay, so let's check out match 3. In match 3 I was playing, I think, Mirror, and I can already feel like this deck getting slightly more popular over the last weekend. I did not see it as much like 2 weeks ago, but I feel I feel like people are starting to play it a bit more again, since the energy decks are such a high part of the metagame. And as I said, consign to memory in the main is just a super important piece in this build, because it's not just a hate card in the main, it's also a card that lets you scam Solitude, scam Phlage, counter your ring effect on your upkeep, so you can play the ring, and then just there's a lot of situations where a ring will kill you and deal like 3-4 damage in your upkeep, and you just tap the ring in response, draw that consign to memory, counter that effect, and just proceed to win the game. Okay, so also consigned to memory felt like a very important piece in the mirror matches, because it is a card that lets me counter their ring for 1 mana, and the ring is probably the most important card in the matchup. Okay, so having the 1 mana unconditional counter to ring was just super relevant. And I think the key for the matchup for winning, upping your win percentage in the matchup is just patience. Patience is truly the key, and you have to be patient and not take unnecessary game actions if they are not needed. Sometimes they're okay if you believe that opponent is not will not you will not win the late game if you have like three cards and opponent has 7. There are definitely situations where it's okay to just jam and hope for the best, but usually the patience is like the very important factor. And yeah, my opponent didn't counter the solitude there, so that was kind of like, this was the perfect situation. I have the spell snare to counter the counter spell, and they did not use the counter to the solitude, which says to me that they are low on the counters, and I have consigned to memory for their turn. And as you can see here, 1 mana unconditional counter to the one ring. You play it and your opponents concede. So it's just a super good card. So many ways to use it, and it's better in this deck than almost in any other blue deck. And that is very key reason why I believe this build is one of the best right now. It can use consign to memory so well, and consign to memory is just a super strong card right now. And there is multiple reasons to just play this deck. Okay, so we can check out the sideboarding plan. As you can see here, I have Stern Scoldings are out. I boarded in the third consigned to memory, didn't board in the fourth one. Boarded out 1 Discharge, 1 Phlage, all the Wrath of the Skies. I don't believe they are necessary in the control mirror, and 1 Tune the Narrative. And brought in like my Soul Guide Lanterns, my Spell Pierce, my Force of Negation, all the extra counter spells I have, and 1 consigned to memory from the sideboard. And now I have a bunch of counters in this deck, a bunch of cheap, effective counter spells. And okay, opponent tries to ending my Soul Guide Lantern here. In response, I just decide it's best for me to draw a card here. Okay, so I go for a survey land. I actually decided to leave this land on top. So I can potentially cycle the Ragrin Tram, so I think like playing Steam Vents next turn feels like a decent choice. Okay, so I let the Tamiyo resolve because I have the Galvanic Discharge. Okay, my opponent was playing Tamiyo. I don't like Tamiyo in this build. There is just no easy way to flip it. And like flipping the Tamiyo with the ring is not where I want to be. So that's not the optimal way to flip the Tamiyo. And without efficient ways to flip it early, there's no like preordain, there's just like 2 or 3 tuned narratives, and no other draw spells, so you have to rely on cracking the clues. I just don't like it in this deck. So but tomorrow or day after tomorrow, I will have also another very popular deck in the current metagame playing for Tamiyo. I believe Tamiyo is a great fit there, and we will talk about that in another deck. As you can see here, I played that Steam Vents and cycled this Ragrin Traum from hand and ended up with a bunch of lands on the field, a bunch of counter spells, a bunch of relevant lands. I have like a Reign of Glory, I have Minamo here, and if I draw a Ring or a Phlage, these lands will be like very effective. Okay, so opponent plays Subtlety, and I go for Galvanic Discharge, but this is obvious sign that they are aware that they are well behind in this game, so they're trying to do anything to like hope that I don't have a removal, so hope to force me to use a counter on the Subtlety. That did not happen because I still left some discharges in so I can deal with subtleties and solitudes and stuff like that, but having subtlety is just super bad option for a mirror. Subtlety is terrible in the mirror, and solitude is great in the mirror, and I have 4 solitudes. They're probably playing like 2 or 3 subtleties, and Tamio is actually decent in the mirror, but I left 3 discharges in, so, and I also have like 3 Phlages in. I have Static Prison, so I left a lot of options in the main board to get rid of these cards, and that was also like really important, because if I did not have removal to kill the Tamio would probably just go crazy in this matchup and win them the game. Okay, so at this point, it's obviously like a classic control fight, but I have 4 relevant cards that let me deal with anything, and at this point I'm just basically waiting to either draw Phlage or draw the One Ring. And so now I find a Phlage, I have Arena of Glory, I can of course go for it now, I can wait for a turn, it doesn't matter that much, but I have 2 spare mana for counterspell, so I decide to go for it immediately. A Phlage with haste deals 6 with ability plus 6 more from attacks, puts them down on 4 life, which makes me have lethal next turn. Opponent lets all this happen, and I still have a prison if they play the One Ring. I have a counterspell, another Force of Negation on my turn. Opponent lets me untap, with this means I will have 2 counterspells. And yeah, I go for attacks, deal 3 face. Opponent tries to jump with Subtlety. I decide to use the Solitude here because Solitude still means lethal damage with Phlage here, since Phlage attacks for 6. Opponent tries to consign that ability to just make them able to block it anyway, but I also have like a counterspell plus discharge, so it doesn't really matter. And that is game over, easy win. And let's check out match 4. Okay, so I keep a decent hand, 4 lands, Wrath of the Skies, Solitude, and One Ring. And the opponent starts with... Sorry, did I turn in the wrong match? I think I did. Just a second. Yeah, I accidentally turned wrong. Okay, this was match 4. Okay, so 2 lands here. I don't have a second blue one for a counterspell, but I have 2 discharges, and yeah, that was the reason why I kept this hand. I find this was the weirdest of all the games ever. Like, my opponent keeps a 0 lander, and they discard Expedition Map and the One Ring, so I was thinking I'm probably playing against Eldrazi. So I boarded like I'm playing against Eldrazi, but it was not Eldrazi. It was actually Amulet Titan, and they probably kept multiple bounce lands, something like that. But and since they're playing like 35 lands or something like that, they probably hoped to draw a land naturally in 2 or 3 turns, but that did not happen. My board was still fine. I boarded like I'm playing against Eldrazi, but it was okay board since I still had like Obsidian Charmhouse in, which is actually good against Amulet Titan 2, and I had all 4 consigned to memories in, and I don't think like maybe Static Prison on this Spelunking was very good, but okay, so never mind. I had a Prismatic Ending here to kill the Amulet. I was hoping to find a second red source to play the Charmau. Okay, now my opponent has Lumra, the new Titan, and I consigned their ability, so they did not get to find more, bring more lands into play. And at this point, they're just on 1 card in hand, and I was able to play the Charmau. And for this turn, I decided to let the Lumra damage through. I was hoping to get another land to hardcast the Solitude. That did not happen, so I exiled the Lumra and start attacking with the Charma. Okay, now my opponent finds Cultivator, Colossus, but only has 1 land in their hand, so Colossus didn't do much. And I got the protection from the One Ring for a turn and just continue attacking with the Charmau. Unfortunately, opponent also finds the One Ring. Yeah, I resolved it first, so I was able to draw more cards first, and here I was able to I had to exile the Cultivator Colossus, and I scammed my so they tried to yeah, I scammed my Solitude in. Opponent draws there. I'm still holding Force of Negation if they try to play something relevant. So I have 7 damage here attacking, and I'm also drawing a bunch of cards from the One Ring. Opponent tries to play another ring, but I play a Force of Negation. I kind of want them to get that damage and want to get these 7 damage through. I draw more cards from the ring, but yeah, the cards I draw wasn't really that great. So for this turn, I decided it's best option. My best option is just to play another ring, get that protection again. Again, I have Phlage in the yard and a lot of other cards in the yard. I also have Force of Negation for my turn. Okay, so yeah, this is the ring fight. Opponent is on 17, but this is actually like a 2-turn clock, and if I can counter enough of their stuff, then I have counterspell plus Force of Negation here plus Solitude, so I have 3 pieces of interaction, and yeah, that probably is enough here to win this game. And yeah, I force their amulet, then let them resolve the Aftermath Analyst. I still have counterspell, I still have Solitude. Opponent uses the Aftermath Analyst ability, but they don't have anything relevant here to use the Mirror Pool on, and they can gain a bunch of mana, and but I have two, as I said, I have 2 pieces of interaction, so I'm hoping that will be enough to win this one. Okay, opponent goes for Otawara, bounces one of my Charmhouse, and tries to Mirror Pool their Endurance. In response, I Solitude Endurance and kill both of their blockers. So I have 7 damage and plus the 4 damage from the One Ring. and that is 11 damage, which is enough for the kill. And I also had a counterspell backup, so yeah, that is enough. I can also just go for another charm out here, kill more of their lands, and yeah, find another counterspell just in case. And the opponent is dead in the upkeep, so that is the match against Amulet. So let's check out the last match of the league. I think the last match of the league for the trophy, I also played the mirror against JESKAI Control. Okay, so Spell Snare also can be a sweet piece in these mirror games. When you have like 5 mana, play the ring, and then they try to counterspell, and then you play the Spell Snare. But yeah, opponent again played the version with Tamio, and I don't have much targets for creatures in their deck, so I'm kind of glad they played the Tamio. So this way I actually have something to use my Galvanic Discharges on and the Phlages. Of course, if they draw it in a good time when I don't have removal, Tamio can take over the game and win it eventually. Okay, so opponent has 2 mana here, so I don't want to play the ring into counterspell. I just being patient here, and I have consigned to memory to draw to counter their ring if needed. So that is and I also have a Spell Snare for their counterspell. So kind of pretty sure at this point that I will be able to counter their ring if needed. Wrath of the Sky is usually a pretty useless card in the mirror. I always like board them out. Okay, so still I'm on a 4 mana, a 5 mana. I really don't need. I need. I'm like certain I'll get enough lands eventually, because this is a mirror matchup, and I'm definitely. They don't have any pressure. I know what they're doing, so I'm okay just playing a slow game. Eventually, I'm getting the lands to play out my spells. But being patient is almost always the key in this matchup. Okay, my opponent also passes. Both of the players not doing much. And I decide to I have 2 solitudes at this point. And I decide to go for the solitude, kind of try to bait them into using the counterspell. That doesn't happen, but I start attacking with Solitude. I decided to go for this game plan because my opponent lost a lot of life with fetching, and they were already on 12. So they were kind of soft to the Solitude beatdown, so I decided to go for it. My opponent plays Solitude on my Solitude, then I Solitude their Solitude, and I didn't want to use Consign to Memory. I have to save it here to counter their One Ring. Opponent finds a Phlage that is a pretty good piece. At the moment, but I also have a Phlage of my own in the yard, so that's okay for me. Now my opponent now has 4 mana, and drawing the Spell Pierce was the card I needed to be confident of resolving the One Ring here. My opponent didn't actually have any counter spells, which was great news, and I passed the turn. Holding Consign to Memory, plus Spell Pierce, plus Spell Snare. There's just like no way they're getting through this. So I go with the Consign, counter the Ring. They also have Snare and Spell Pierce. So they only have 3 mana, so I can probably resolve the Phlage on my turn, which puts me in such a big advantage. I now have another ring in my hand if they somehow deal with this one, with Static Prison, something like that. So I go for the draws, then go for the Phlage from the yard. I'm expecting some counterspell, so some good use of the Pierce or Snare. I just resolve it, deal 3 to my opponent, and yeah, the Phlage is just a very good beatdown. It kills very quickly. I have a kill for a next turn, and I have some spells to protect them. Okay, so opponent resolved the one ring. Unfortunately, can't do anything about it there, but I'm already in a big advantage. So I was happy to pierce their Teferi here. My opponent is much lower on life than me, so I'm hoping to draw some counter spells with the one ring there, and then counter the relevant stuff they may have next turn and finish them off with the Phlage. Okay, here is the first counter spell. That is great news. I tap the ring, draw more cards, and I find 3 counter spells. That is a lot. That is a lot. And I can also put my Phlage in the yards together with the Wrath of the Skies that I don't really need. And now I have 3 counter spells and a spell snare for their turn. So yeah, I go for it. Counter spell number 1, counter spell number 2, get spell snared, then counter spell number 3. My opponent also had a bunch of counterspells, so they actually resolved this Wrath of the Skies, kills my Phlage. That didn't matter much because I was still in a really good position. Phlage in the yard, I can escape it right now, draw 4 more cards with the ring, have so much life. And my opponent is on 11, losing 3 right now and losing 2 more on their upkeep. So they are the one that need to find answers in this situation. They go for a subtlety. That's okay. I have 2 more Phlages in my hand, so I decide to just go for the Phlage, fill the yard so I can escape it next turn again. I also have another one from the hand which can deal 3 more. My opponent also wants to go for the Phlage to gain life, get them out of trouble, but they don't know that I have 6 damage here with Phlages, and I have Spell Snare to protect it against the counterspell. Okay, so I untap. I have another fetch if needed, which I can use to fill the graveyard, and then go for the Phlage, put it in the yard, and then I have enough cards to also escape it, plus counterspell and the spell snare backup. So that is the game. Okay, so I go for the escape, opponent has counterspell, I have spell snare, and yeah, as I said, that is the game. And let's check out the last game of this match, the perfect 5-0, 10-0 league with the deck that seems like very powerful in the metagame, although I did play 2 mirror matches in this league, but that's also pretty good point that to see that I think actually this version is pretty good in the mirror, because subtlety is worse in the mirror than the solitude. Solitude is better, and I have spell pierce and 2 force of negations, which are very relevant in the mirror. A decent sideboard where I have a second pierce, I have third force of negation, I have 2 Teferis, so a lot of good sideboard cards overall. And I feel like this version is slightly favored to win against in the mirror. As you could see in all these matches that this worked very well for me. I decided to use this opportunity to try to resolve the Teferi Time Reveler, and I still had a force of negations on in my hand if they go for the ring. So I was in okay position, ready to force the ring if needed. or Teferi or whatever. But yeah, now I force the ring and opponent only has 2 cards in their hand, and I'm the one that has the Teferi and the Phlage, which are 2 very strong cards in the matchup. Okay, my opponent unfortunately finds another ring. That is potentially a problem. But here I have a Teferi. I have Teferi, and Teferi is good card in the matchup. Makes a lot of their stuff dead. And yeah, but here they also find Minamo to untap the ring, draw a lot. That is really a lot of cards. And I did not have much chance here, but I go for the Phlage, deal 3 to their face, put them down on 11. They're losing 3 more in their upkeep, that is 8. So at this point they are looking for another ring or another Phlage. And as you can see here, I have a Phlage in the yard. I need 1 more card. Okay, opponent tries to flip the Tamio with 1 ring. I play the Discharge in response. And opponent just doesn't have a solution for a Phlage, for escaped Phlage here. They played the Narset, played the Tamio, but all of that is just not doing much since I have Arena of Glory and Phlage, and yeah, just Phlage wins this game. 3 damage to face, plus escape Phlage with Arena of Glory. Opponent just didn't draw they needed like subtlety or some removal or another ring. Did not draw it, and I was able to get the win thanks to Teferi. As they were not able to play on my turn. They probably had a bunch of counter spells in hand, but they were not able to kill the Teferi. They were not able to play that counter spells, and the Phlage just plus Arena of Glory finished this game, and that was it. That was the entire league. The perfect 10-0 for a deck that feels just very powerful at the moment. And I played, as I said, a bunch of matches, like 40-50 matches total with this deck to decide on all the card choices, and I was pretty happy with it. And as I said, just overall win rate of the deck was brutal. Actually, I started this build with dress downs in the main, and I had some null drifters. But after playing that version of a deck, I realized that just a full control version is probably better. Although the null drifter version does win matchups easier, and that's where I got the idea to just leave the consigns in, because they're still good even without the null drifter. They still work with Phlage, they still work with Solitude, they still work with One Ring. So I left the consigns in, put dress downs in the sideboard, removed the null drifters, added more 1 mana counter spells in those slots, and Prismatic Ending plus Static Prison are 4 very important cards for the mentioned Frogtide matchup. Prismatic Ending just very easily kills the frog when they play it on 2. Spell Snare also gets rid of it. Static Prison gets rid of the Murktide, and Discharge can also often effectively kill the frog, plus Solitude and Breath of the Skies. Stern Scoldings, Dress Downs on the sideboard, all good against it. Together with Teferi, they make Frogtide matchup either even or I think favorable for this deck, for this version of a deck. So that's it. I think through all the tweaking, I covered all the most important matchups right now in the metagame. And as I said, I've already posted on the Twitter, I'm at the moment just not sure what is actually the bad matchup for this deck. Through the 40-50 matches I play, I did not actually encounter any bad matchups. There are probably some just hyper aggressive decks, or maybe something else I'm missing, but this deck kind of feels that it can deal with everything, and maybe like in theory Frogtide could be like the worst matchup, but I tuned it to be able to fight that matchup with I have spell snares, I have endings, I have static prison, all these cards get rid of their signature cards like Frog and Murktide. Galvanic Discharge can be effective in killing both, since we can get a lot of energy with the tuned narratives and Wrath of the Skies and Galvanic Discharges. So Force of Negation, Spell Pierce, Phlages, Rings, all Solitudes, all these cards are just very, very good against them, and playing Subtleties in a slot of Solitude makes your Frogtide matchup much worse. And not having Prismatic Ending also makes your Frogtide matchup much worse. Plus, not having Spell Snares or Consigned to Memories, all the other stuff overall makes the Jeskai bad matchup against Dimir, but that is not true. I think with this build it is like tuned to win in that matchup. It's not super like a super high win rate against it, but I think it's either 50-50 or slightly favorable at this point. So that's it. Okay, so you have to always be careful about Harbinger, but we have access to Basic Mountain, kill it with Discharge, Basic to Basic Planes, kill it with Static Prison. There is definitely plus Solitude. This is why I believe just Solitude is much better than Subtlety in this deck, and I would just definitely play the Solitude right now. And okay, so that is it for today. Thank you for watching this far. A friendly reminder to click like, click subscribe, comment down in the video. Tell me your impressions, your choices in if you're Jeskai Control player, if you like the deck. Something I missed. I definitely I considered like scolding in main. I had it in main at one point, and then I missed some slots, and I removed it to the sideboard. I really like the card. It's been so good. I consider stuff like Teferi in the main, Snapcasters, all these cards I have on the sideboard. I played them in the main at one point, so I played this deck solely this deck for 3 or 4 days total. So had a bunch of matches with it, and yeah, for me this is it. This is my favorite and perfect version. And yeah, as I said, that's all for today. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.